The oxygen masks dropped as the plane lurched violently to one side. Through the chaos, 11-year-old Zara Morgan remained strapped in her wheelchair in the middle of the aisle, abandoned by flight attendant Vanessa Winters, who had just minutes earlier mocked her disability and dark skin. Now, as passengers scrambled for safety, Zara's mother Amara lay unconscious 3 rows back, and no one was coming to help. "You're on your own, special needs," Vanessa had sneered before walking away. With trembling hands, Zara reached for her emergency medical alert button, knowing she had exactly 47 seconds before her next seizure hit. Would anyone save her before the plane's rapid descent turned deadly? Before we begin this shocking, true story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you believe in justice and standing up against discrimination, please hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on more stories that expose the truth about racial injustice in America. Your support helps these important stories reach more people who need to hear them. 3 weeks earlier, Zara Morgan sat in her 7th grade science classroom, clutching the gold medal she had just won at the National Young Scientist competition. Her project on aerospace dynamics and flight stabilization systems had impressed the judges so much that one of them, a retired NASA engineer, had personally told her she had a future at the space agency. The other students applauded politely, but Zara could see the surprise in their eyes. A black girl in a wheelchair wasn't who they expected to take home the top prize. Her teacher, Mrs. Calloway, beamed with pride, having mentored Zara for the past 2 years, recognizing her exceptional mind early on. "Mom, we actually get to go," Zara exclaimed that evening, watching her mother Amara count out the carefully saved bills from her emergency fund. As a single mother and nurse working double shifts at Chicago Memorial Hospital, Amara had been putting away money for 3 years for something special. She had originally planned it for college expenses, but when Zara won the competition and received an invitation to the prestigious space camp in Huntsville, Alabama, Amara knew this was an investment in her daughter's dreams. "Of course we're going, baby. Nothing's going to stop my little astronaut," Amara said, pressing a kiss to Zara's forehead. What Zara didn't know was that Amara had picked up extra weekend shifts for the past month to make it happen. The tickets, accommodation, and specialized transport for Zara's wheelchair had stretched their budget to the breaking point, but seeing the light in her daughter's eyes made every extra hour worth it. 2 weeks later, they arrived at O'Hare International Airport, 3 hours early as Amara had meticulously planned to ensure they had plenty of time for security and boarding with Zara's wheelchair. Delta Airlines Flight 1827 to Atlanta would be their first leg, followed by a connection to Huntsville. Everything had gone smoothly through check-in and security, with helpful staff guiding them through the accessible lanes. "Look at all these planes, Mom!" Zara exclaimed, her scientific mind already calculating takeoff speeds and lift dynamics as they waited at the gate. Her enthusiasm attracted smiles from nearby passengers, including an older gentleman who introduced himself as James Whitfield, a retired teacher traveling to visit his grandchildren in Georgia. The pre-boarding announcement came, and they approached the gate with their priority boarding passes. That's when they first encountered Vanessa Winters, the head flight attendant for their flight. In her mid-40s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach her cold blue eyes, Vanessa's demeanor changed visibly when she saw Zara's wheelchair. "Oh, a wheelchair passenger," she said, not to them but to her colleague at the gate, her voice tinged with annoyance. "That's going to slow us down." Amara pretended not to hear, keeping her focus on making sure Zara was comfortable as the ground crew prepared to help transfer her to the aisle chair for boarding. They had done this many times before. Zara was an experienced traveler despite her young age. Once on the plane, they discovered another problem. Their assigned seats were in row 14, near the bathroom, as Amara had specifically requested due to Zara's medical needs. But when they arrived at their row, the seats were occupied by a white family with 2 small children. "Excuse me, I believe these are our seats," Amara said politely, showing her boarding pass to the mother. "Oh, the flight attendant told us we could sit here since it's closer to the bathroom for our kids," the woman replied, looking genuinely confused. Vanessa appeared behind them, her voice crisp with authority. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes, these are our assigned seats," Amara explained. We specifically booked them because they're near the bathroom, which my daughter needs access to. Vanessa's eyes flicked between Amara and Zara, lingering disapprovingly on Zara's wheelchair. Those seats are reserved for people who really need them. I've reassigned you to row 29 at the back. But we do need them, Amara insisted, trying to keep her voice level. My daughter has cerebral palsy and requires proximity to the bathroom. That's why we booked these specific seats weeks ago. Look, Vanessa said, lowering her voice but not enough that others couldn't hear. These people have small children. Surely you understand. Those other seats will be fine for your situation. The way she said your situation carried unmistakable disdain. A few nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably, while others stared openly at the confrontation. I have medical documentation, Amara said firmly, producing a folder from her carry-on. And according to the Air Carrier Access Act, you cannot reassign seats that were specifically booked to accommodate a disability. Vanessa's smile tightened. There you go, playing the disability card. These people always want special treatment. She directed this comment to the surrounding passengers, as if seeking allies, but most avoided eye contact. It's not special treatment, Zara spoke up, her voice soft but clear. It's equal access. Vanessa's eyes narrowed at Zara's interjection. Children should speak when spoken to, she snapped, then turned to the family in their seats. I apologize for the confusion. It seems these passengers are insisting on their original seats. The family gathered their belongings, the mother looking embarrassed as they moved. We didn't know, she said quietly to Amara. We would never have taken them if we'd known. By now, a line had formed in the aisle, and frustrated sighs could be heard as the boarding process stalled. Amara felt everyone's eyes on them as she helped Zara transfer from the aisle chair to her seat, the whispers and stares making her daughter shrink into herself. Just as they were getting settled, a voice came from behind them. Is everything okay here? It was First Officer Marcus Chen, who had stepped out of the cockpit after hearing about a disturbance during boarding. Before Amara could answer, Vanessa interjected smoothly. Everything's fine, Marcus. Just a seating misunderstanding that's been resolved. Officer Chen glanced at Zara and Amara, seeming to sense the tension. He leaned slightly closer to them and said quietly, If you need anything during the flight, don't hesitate to let me know. We want all our passengers to have a comfortable journey. As he returned to the cockpit, Vanessa's expression hardened, momentarily before she resumed her practiced smile for the other boarding passengers. Zara clutched her mother's hand, whispering, Mom, she doesn't like us. Why doesn't she like us? Amara squeezed her daughter's hand, having had this conversation too many times before. Some people make judgments before they know a person's heart, baby, but we're going to have a great trip anyway. Nothing's going to stop us. Little did they know that this was just the beginning of a journey that would test not just their patience, but their very dignity and determination in ways they could never have imagined. An hour into the flight, the seatbelt sign finally turned off, and passengers began to move about the cabin. Zara whispered to her mother that she needed to use the bathroom, a process that typically required the narrow aisle wheelchair kept on board specifically for this purpose. Amara pressed the call button, and after a few minutes Vanessa appeared, her expression souring when she saw who had called. Yes? She asked curtly. My daughter needs to use the bathroom. Could we please have the aisle chair? Amara asked, politely. Vanessa looked down at Zara with barely concealed impatience. The aisle chair is currently unavailable. You'll have to wait. Unavailable? How can it be unavailable? It's required by federal regulations to be on board, Amara questioned, her nursing background making her well-versed in accessibility requirements. It's being used for storage at the moment, Vanessa replied, her voice rising so that nearby passengers could hear. You should have thought about bathroom needs before boarding. Maybe next time plan better. Zara's face flushed with embarrassment as several passengers turned to look. Mom, it's okay, she whispered, though her discomfort was evident. No, it's not okay, Amara insisted. The Air Carrier Access Act requires… Vanessa cut her off with a dismissive wave. I know the regulations. The chair will be available when it's available. I suggest you wait until we land in Atlanta. It's only another hour. Before Amara could respond, Vanessa strode away, leaving them without resolution. Just 15 minutes. Later, however, Amara noticed Vanessa escorting a white family's child to the bathroom, the supposedly unavailable aisle chair now mysteriously in use. "Did you see that?" Zara asked, her voice small but her eyes tracking the clear double standard. Amara's patience snapped. She unfastened her seatbelt and made her way to the galley where Vanessa was preparing drink service. "Excuse me," Amara said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I couldn't help but notice the aisle chair is suddenly available. My daughter still needs to use the bathroom." Vanessa barely looked up from the drink cart. "You'll have to wait your turn. I have a service to complete." "The chair was unavailable for my daughter, but immediately available for another child," Amara pointed out, keeping her voice level but firm. Vanessa finally turned to face her, leaning in slightly. "Maybe in your culture bathroom schedules aren't important, but on my aircraft we follow rules and procedures. That family asked before boarding." The racist implication hung in the air, shocking Amara into momentary silence. A few passengers nearby had heard, with reactions ranging from uncomfortable shifting to a few barely suppressed chuckles. "What's that supposed to mean, my culture?" Amara finally managed, her heart pounding. "I think you know exactly what I mean," Vanessa replied, her smile cold and professional. "Now please return to your seat or I'll have to report you for interfering with flight attendant duties." From 2 rows up, James Whitfield, the retired teacher they'd met at the gate, stood up. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying the authority of his decades in education. "I couldn't help overhearing. This woman's daughter clearly needs accommodation that you're providing to others. That's discrimination, plain and simple." Vanessa's expression hardened. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. Please return to your seat." "It concerns all of us when we witness injustice," James replied calmly. Other passengers were now openly watching the confrontation. "Are you threatening me, sir?" Vanessa asked loudly. "Because disrupting flight safety is a federal offense. I'll be sure to have authorities meet you in Atlanta if you continue." The threat hung in the air, effectively silencing further protest. Just then, the plane hit a patch of turbulence, causing the seatbelt sign to illuminate with a ding. "All passengers must return to their seats immediately," Vanessa announced triumphantly, using the turbulence as an excuse to end the confrontation. As Amara made her way back to her seat, defeated for the moment, she heard whispers from other passengers. Some seemed sympathetic, while others muttered about playing the race card and special treatment. Back in their row, Zara looked up at her mother with eyes too wise for her 11 years. "The turbulence pattern is strange, Mom," she whispered. "It's not matching the normal atmospheric disturbance patterns for this flight path and altitude." "What do you mean, honey?" Amara asked, momentarily distracted from their situation by her daughter's analytical mind. "It's like it's coming in regular intervals, like someone's causing it on purpose," Zara explained, her brow furrowed. "Remember my science project on flight dynamics? This doesn't feel right." Amara stroked her daughter's hair, about to gently dismiss the concern as scientific curiosity, when she noticed Officer Chen walking through the cabin, checking on passengers during the turbulence. He paused briefly near their row, making brief but meaningful eye contact with Amara that seemed to convey both apology and concern. What would you do if you were in Amara's situation, facing such blatant discrimination? Comment. Number 1. If you think she should file a formal complaint with the airline after landing. Or, number 2, if you believe she should confront Vanessa more directly about her behavior. Don't forget to hit the like button if you stand against racism and discrimination. And subscribe for more stories that shine a light on these important issues. How far do you think Vanessa will go to make this family's journey miserable? And what secrets might be hiding behind those unusual turbulence patterns Zara noticed? The situation is about to escalate in ways nobody on that plane could possibly anticipate. When Flight 1827 finally touched down in Atlanta, Amara felt a wave of relief, thinking the worst was behind them. That relief was short-lived. As passengers began to deplane, Vanessa's voice came over the intercom. Wheelchair passenger in row 14, please remain seated until all other passengers have deplaned and specialized assistance can be provided. This was standard procedure, but what wasn't standard was what happened next. After every other passenger had left, including James Whitfield, who gave them an encouraging nod on his way out, they sat waiting and waiting. 15 minutes passed with no sign of the aisle chair or assistance. "Mom, our connection," Zara said anxiously, checking the time on her tablet. Their flight to Huntsville was scheduled to depart in 87 minutes, which should have been plenty of time for their 2-hour layover, but every passing minute eroded that buffer. Amara pressed the call button, and eventually, a different flight attendant appeared. "We're still waiting for the aisle chair," Amara explained. "Our connecting flight leaves soon." "I'm sorry," the young man said, looking genuinely apologetic. "Ms. Winters told me she'd handle your deplaning personally, but I haven't seen her since we landed. Let me check what's happening." Another 10 minutes passed before Vanessa reappeared, all efficiency and false concern. "Oh my, are you still here? There must have been a miscommunication about the aisle chair. Let me get that for you right away." By the time they finally made it off the plane, they had less than 40 minutes to make it to their connecting flight at a gate in another terminal. Rushing through the crowded airport with Zara's wheelchair was challenging enough without time pressure, but Amara was determined not to miss their flight. When they arrived at the gate for their Huntsville connection, breathless and stressed, the gate agent delivered the bad news. "I'm sorry, but final boarding was completed 5 minutes ago. The jetway is closed." "But we had a connecting flight reservation," Amara protested. "We were delayed getting off our previous flight. Surely, there's something you can do?" The gate agent tapped at her computer. "I can rebook you on the next flight to Huntsville, which departs at 8:45 p.m. It was currently just past noon. "But I see there's another issue, your checked luggage." "What about our luggage?" Amara asked, a sinking feeling in her stomach. "It appears it's been misrouted," the agent said, choosing her words carefully. "According to the system, it's been sent to Birmingham." "Birmingham? But that's in a different state," Amara exclaimed. "My daughter's medications are in that luggage. We need those bags." "I understand, ma'am. Let me connect you with our baggage services department," the agent said, directing them to a customer service counter in yet another terminal. After another harried journey across the airport, they found themselves facing Theodore Williams, a customer service representative whose initial friendliness faded as soon as he pulled up their reservation. "Morgan, party of 2 from Chicago," he confirmed, his expression changing subtly. "Let me just make a quick call to verify some information." He stepped away with the phone, but not quite far enough that Amara couldn't hear snippets of his conversation. "Yes, Ms. Winters. I understand. Difficult passengers. Yes, I'll handle it." When he returned, his demeanor had completely changed. "Unfortunately, your luggage won't be available until tomorrow morning at the earliest. We can't offer any accommodation or vouchers since the connection was missed due to passenger delay, not airline error." "But it wasn't our fault," Amara protested. "We were deliberately delayed deplaning, and my daughter needs her medication tonight." Theodore's expression remained unmoved. "I can rebook you on the 8:45 p.m. flight to Huntsville, but that's the best I can do. As for the medication, I suggest finding a local pharmacy and contacting your doctor for an emergency prescription." Defeated and exhausted, Amara accepted the rebooking. As they moved away from the counter, a familiar voice called out to them. "Ms. Morgan? Zara?" It was James Whitfield, their ally from the flight. "I thought you'd be halfway to Huntsville by now." Amara explained what had happened, tears of frustration finally breaking through her composed exterior. James's expression darkened. "This is outrageous, and not coincidental, I'm afraid." He lowered his voice. "While I was waiting for my next flight, I overheard that flight attendant, Ms. Winters, on her phone near the crew lounge. She was specifically calling security about the difficult black passengers in Terminal B and suggesting they be watched carefully." "She what?" Amara gasped. "I'm afraid it gets worse," James continued. "I've spent 40 years in education, including serving as a diversity coordinator. What you're experiencing is textbook discrimination, and I suspect it's not. The first time Ms. Winters has done this. He helped them file a formal complaint with the airline's customer service department, using his knowledge of regulations and policies to ensure it was properly documented. As they were completing the paperwork, Amara noticed Vanessa watching, them from across the terminal, phone in hand, her expression calculating. Minutes later, 2 security officers approached their group. "Excuse me, ma'am," one of them addressed Amara. "We need to speak with you regarding a report of disruptive behavior on your recent flight." James stood up immediately. "Officers, I was on that flight, and I can assure you there was no disruptive behavior from these passengers. Quite the opposite, in fact." "And you are?" the security officer asked. "James Whitfield, retired Executive Vice President of Operations for American Airlines and current board member of the Aviation Safety Foundation," he replied calmly, producing a business card from his wallet. The effect was immediate. The officers exchanged glances, suddenly less certain. "We're just following up on a report," the second officer said more diplomatically. "But if you're vouching for these passengers, Mr. Whitfield, we can consider this matter resolved." As the officers departed, Amara noticed Vanessa still watching from a distance, her expression now one of poorly concealed rage. James followed Amara's gaze and frowned. "I don't think she's going to let this go," he warned. "People like that, when they feel their authority is challenged, especially by those they consider beneath them, they can become dangerous." "What are we supposed to do?" Amara asked, feeling overwhelmed. "We're stuck here for 8 hours. Zara's medication is on its way to Alabama, and this woman seems determined to make our lives miserable. For now, stay in public areas where there are plenty of witnesses," James advised. "Document everything. And I'll make some calls. I may be retired, but I still have friends in the industry." As James stepped away to make his calls, Zara tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, her eyes wide with worry, "I think she's following us." Amara turned to see Vanessa disappearing behind a column, still watching them. A chill ran down her spine as she realized this was no longer just about one uncomfortable flight. Something more sinister was unfolding, and they were trapped in an airport with nowhere to go for the next 8 hours. With 8 hours to kill before their rescheduled flight, Amara and Zara found a quiet corner of the Atlanta airport food court, as far from their original gate as possible. James had reluctantly left for his own connection, but had insisted on exchanging phone numbers and promised to follow up on their complaint. "I'm sorry about your medicine, baby," Amara said, pushing a plate of airport pizza toward her daughter. "I've called Dr. Patterson, and he's sending an emergency prescription to a pharmacy near the airport. I'll pick it up as soon as they call." Zara nodded, picking at her food without much enthusiasm. The excitement of their space camp adventure had been thoroughly dampened by the morning's events. "Do you think she'll be on our next flight too?" she asked in a small voice. Before Amara could answer, a young white girl about Zara's age approached their table, followed by her parents. "Excuse me," the girl said brightly, "is that a space camp backpack?" Zara looked up, surprised, at the girl pointing to her NASA-themed backpack. "Yeah, we're heading there tomorrow." "Me too," the girl exclaimed. "I'm Emma Schultz. Are you in the robotics track or aerospace?" "Aerospace," Zara replied, perking up slightly. "I did a project on flight stabilization systems." Emma's eyes widened. "No way, I've been working on orbital mechanics." "We're totally going to be in the same group," the girl's parents approached with warm smiles. "I'm Dr. Richard Schultz, and this is my wife, Dr. Caroline Schultz," the father introduced themselves. Richard was tall, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, while Caroline had the confident bearing of someone used to commanding a room. "Amara Morgan," Amara introduced herself, "and this is my daughter Zara." "Mind if we join you?" Caroline asked. "Sounds like our daughters are going to be camp buddies." As they settled at the table, Emma and Zara quickly fell into animated conversation about space science, NASA missions, and their expectations for camp. For the first time since the flight, Zara was smiling, her natural enthusiasm returning. Meanwhile, the adults exchanged pleasantries. Richard was a cardiothoracic surgeon, while Caroline was a professor of astrophysics at MIT, currently on sabbatical to write a book. We're actually on the same delayed flight to Huntsville, Richard mentioned. 8:45, right? We missed our earlier connection too. You missed your connection? Amara asked, surprised. What happened? Richard shrugged. Mechanical delay on our inbound flight from Boston. These things happen, but they gave us meal vouchers and access to the lounge while we wait. They didn't offer us anything, Amara said, the disparity striking her immediately. Caroline frowned. That's odd. It's standard procedure for delays over 4 hours. Hesitantly, Amara began sharing their experience, starting with Vanessa's behavior on the flight and the subsequent problems with deplaning and their luggage. As she spoke, the Schultz's expressions grew increasingly concerned. That's outrageous, Caroline said when Amara finished. Have you filed a complaint? Yes, with the help of another passenger, but I'm not sure it will go anywhere, Amara admitted. Richard's face had darkened. This is clearly discriminatory treatment. You should be documenting everything. He pushed his untouched meal vouchers across the table. Please use these. It's the least we can do. Oh, I couldn't, Amara protested. We insist, Caroline said firmly. And Richard, why don't you make that call to Stephen? He's still on the airline's board of directors. Richard nodded, pulling out his phone and stepping away to make the call. Meanwhile, Caroline engaged Amara in conversation about Zara's academic achievements, showing genuine interest in the girl's scientific pursuits. Emma was equally impressed when Zara explained her competition-winning project. You designed a new stabilization system? That's genius-level stuff. It's just physics, Zara said modestly, though she couldn't hide her pride. I've been reading aerospace engineering textbooks since I was 8. She taught herself calculus. At 9, Amara added, the proud mother momentarily overshadowing the stressed traveler. Richard returned, his expression serious. Stephen is looking into the situation. He's concerned about what I've told him. Apparently, there have been other complaints of a similar nature, though nothing that's gained traction. Just then, Amara spotted a familiar blonde head moving through the food court. Vanessa Winters was approaching, now accompanied by an older man in a Delta management uniform with a nameplate reading, Conrad Phillips, Supervisor. That's her, Amara whispered, tension returning to her body. Ms. Morgan, Conrad called out as they approached. I understand there was some unpleasantness on your flight this morning. That's putting it mildly, Amara replied, straightening in her chair. Vanessa here has explained the situation, Conrad continued, his tone patronizing. Apparently, there was a misunderstanding about seating arrangements, and you became aggressive. Aggressive? Amara repeated incredulously. I simply asked for the accommodations we were entitled to by law. She threatened me, Vanessa interjected, her voice trembling in a performance of victimhood that would have impressed Broadway directors. Made me feel unsafe in my own cabin. The Schultzes exchanged glances, clearly not buying this narrative. That's absolutely false, Amara stated firmly. There were dozens of witnesses, including Mr. Whitfield, who helped us file our complaint. Conrad's expression tightened slightly at the mention of a complaint. Yes, well, we've reviewed the situation, and while we understand your frustration, we believe Ms. Winters acted according to protocol. Protocol includes racist comments and deliberate delays? Caroline suddenly interjected, causing both airline employees to turn to her in surprise. I'm sorry, and you are? Conrad asked, his tone noticeably different when addressing the white professor. Dr. Caroline Schultz, MIT Department of Astrophysics, she replied coolly.
My husband, Dr. Richard Schultz, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Boston Memorial, and I have been hearing about the appalling treatment our new friends received. Treatment that, coincidentally, we did not experience despite being in an identical
situation with our connecting flight. Conrad's demeanor shifted visibly. I assure you, Dr. Schultz, Delta Airlines does not discriminate against any passengers. Then perhaps you can explain why the Morgans weren't offered meal vouchers for their delay while we received them automatically, Richard asked, his phone visibly recording the conversation. Conrad faltered, while Vanessa's facade of victimhood briefly slipped to reveal anger. There must have been a system error, Conrad finally said. We'd be happy to offer Ms. Morgan a voucher now. And their luggage being sent to the wrong city? Caroline pressed. Routing errors happen, Vanessa said dismissively. Primarily to black passengers who assert their rights? Richard asked pointedly. The confrontation was drawing attention from nearby tables. Conrad, clearly uncomfortable with the public scrutiny, pulled out a voucher from his pocket. Ms. Morgan, please accept this $100 flight credit as a gesture of goodwill for any inconvenience. I don't want a voucher, Amara said firmly. I want an acknowledgement that we were discriminated against and an assurance it won't happen again. And I want my daughter's medication that's currently on its way to Birmingham. Conrad's professional smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. I'm afraid that's all we can offer at this time. The baggage situation will be resolved as quickly as possible. As they walked away, Vanessa turned back briefly, her eyes meeting Zara's with undisguised contempt. The young girl shrank back in her chair. Unbelievable, Caroline muttered. Richard, did you get that on video? Richard nodded, putting his phone away. Every word. Stephen will want to see this. Thank you, Amara said, feeling overwhelmed by the unexpected support. You didn't have to get involved. Yes, we did, Caroline said firmly. What's happening to you and Zara is wrong, and it's not over. She was right. When they arrived at the gate for their evening flight to Huntsville, Amara's heart sank as she saw a familiar figure checking boarding passes. Vanessa Winters stood at the gate, her professional smile freezing when she spotted them. She's been reassigned to our flight, Amara whispered in disbelief. Richard's expression darkened. This isn't a coincidence. She's deliberately following you. But why? Amara asked. What did we do to make her target us like this? Some people don't need a reason to hate, Caroline said quietly. But they always need to be held accountable. As they approached the gate, Vanessa's smile turned triumphant. The message was clear. The nightmare was far from over. In fact, it was about to get much worse. Boarding the flight to Huntsville felt like walking into a trap. Vanessa's eyes tracked Amara and Zara as they moved down the jetway, her smile never reaching her eyes. The Schultzes boarded ahead of them, with Richard giving Amara a reassuring nod as if to say, "We've got your back." This time, there was no dispute about their seats. They were assigned to row 12, not near any bathroom. Emma and her parents were several rows behind. As Zara got settled, Amara noticed Vanessa watching them intently from the galley, whispering to another flight attendant who glanced their way with newfound suspicion. "Mom, I don't feel good about this," Zara whispered. "She looks like she's planning something." "It's just a short flight, baby," Amara reassured her, though she shared her daughter's apprehension. "Just 90 minutes and we'll be in Huntsville. Then we can focus on space camp and forget all about this." The flight was fully boarded, and the usual safety demonstrations began. Vanessa performed her duties with mechanical precision, her eyes consistently drifting to row 12. When she reached their row during the pre-takeoff check, she made a show of inspecting Zara's seatbelt with excessive thoroughness. "Is there a problem?" Amara asked. "Just doing my job," Vanessa replied coldly. "Safety first, especially for special needs passengers." The plane took off, and for the first 20 minutes, everything seemed normal. Zara had pulled out her tablet to review some aerospace notes, trying to recapture her excitement about space camp. Amara was beginning to relax slightly when Vanessa appeared with the beverage cart. "Coffee, tea, or soda?" she asked mechanically, not making eye contact. "Apple juice for my daughter, please, and coffee for me," Amara replied. Vanessa poured the drinks, handing Zara her juice without incident. But as she placed Amara's coffee on her tray table, the cup suddenly slipped from her hand, spilling the scalding liquid not on Amara, but across Zara's tablet and the medical device attached to her wheelchair. "Oh!" Vanessa exclaimed with exaggerated dismay as Zara cried out. "How clumsy of me!" "What are you doing?" Amara demanded, grabbing napkins to quickly dry the equipment, the specialized medical monitoring device attached to Zara's wheelchair, essential for tracking her vitals and alerting to potential seizures, was now sputtering with electrical shorts. It was an accident, Vanessa said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear, but her eyes told a different story. These things happen. That's her medical equipment, Amara said, trying to keep her voice down but unable to hide her distress. Do you know how expensive and essential that is? You shouldn't have placed it where drinks are served, Vanessa replied dismissively. The airline can't be held responsible for improperly stored personal items. Zara was fighting back tears, both from the shock and from watching her tablet, containing all her carefully prepared space camp notes and projects, sputter and die from the liquid damage. This was deliberate, Amara said, her voice shaking with anger. You've been targeting us from the moment we boarded in Chicago. Vanessa's expression hardened. Are you accusing me of something, Ms. Morgan? Because that sounds like a threat to me, and threatening a flight attendant is a federal offense that could result in this flight being diverted and you being removed in handcuffs. The neighboring passengers were now openly watching the confrontation. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious, and a few were already taking out their phones to record. I'm not threatening anyone, Amara clarified firmly. I'm stating a fact. You damaged my daughter's medical equipment and her personal property. Mom, Zara tugged at her sleeve, distress evident in her voice. My emergency meds, they were in my checked luggage. The realization hit Amara like a physical blow. Without the monitoring equipment working properly, and without Zara's emergency anti-seizure medication that had been in their checked bags, now somewhere in Birmingham, they were in a potentially dangerous situation. My daughter needs medical attention, Amara stated, trying to keep her voice calm. Her monitoring equipment is damaged, and her medication was in our checked luggage that your airline misrouted. I'm sure she's fine, Vanessa dismissed with a wave. Some kids just like the attention. From a few rows back, Caroline Schultz stood up. Excuse me, I'm a doctor. Perhaps I can help? Vanessa immediately blocked the aisle. Please return to your seat, ma'am. The seatbelt sign is on. It's not on, Caroline pointed out, gesturing to the unlit sign. And I'm offering medical assistance to a child in potential distress. We have protocols for medical emergencies, and this isn't one, Vanessa insisted. Return to your seat, or I'll have to report you as an unruly passenger. Caroline stood her ground. As a medical professional, I'm informing you that this child may need attention. Refusing to allow medical assistance could be considered negligence. The standoff continued until Zara suddenly stiffened in her seat, her breathing becoming irregular. Mom, she gasped. I think it's starting. Amara recognized the signs immediately, the prelude to one of Zara's seizures. Without the monitoring, equipment to give precise warnings, and without her medication to prevent it, they had minutes at most. My daughter is having a medical emergency, Amara announced loudly. She needs her medication now. Several passengers now had their phones out, recording the escalating situation. Vanessa, suddenly aware of the optics, switched tactics. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a minor medical situation, she announced smoothly. Everything is under control. Please remain in your seats. Behind her, Zara's condition was visibly deteriorating. Amara, drawing on her nursing training, had moved her daughter to a safer position, clearing the area around her. Is there a doctor on board? Amara called out desperately. Before Caroline could respond again, the plane's intercom crackled to life. This is Captain Jackson. We've been informed of a medical situation on board. If there are any medical professionals among the passengers, please identify yourselves to the cabin crew. Vanessa grabbed the intercom handset. Captain, the situation is under control. It appears to be a passenger seeking attention, possibly to disrupt the flight. Even as she spoke, Zara began experiencing a small seizure. Passengers gasped, and the recording phones multiplied. That child is having a seizure, someone shouted. Let the doctor help her. This is outrageous, another added. Richard Schultz pushed past Vanessa, followed by Caroline. We're doctors, he stated firmly, and we're helping this child, with or without your permission. Vanessa found herself surrounded by increasingly angry passengers, her authority crumbling as the evidence, of her negligence played out before dozens of witnesses and cameras. With nowhere to hide, she retreated to the galley, picking up a phone to presumably call the cockpit. Caroline knelt beside Zara, checking her vital signs while Richard spoke calmly to Amara. "Has this happened before? What medication does she normally take?" "Lorazepam," Amara replied, her nurse training kicking in despite her maternal panic. 2 milligrams. It's in our checked bags that were sent to Birmingham. Emma had come forward as well, holding her mother's hand tightly as she watched her new friend in distress. "Will she be okay?" she asked tearfully. "We'll make sure of it," Caroline assured her daughter, though her expression was grave as she turned to Amara. "The seizure is mild, but without her medication, it could escalate," Amara finished the thought. The plane began its descent into Huntsville, the pilot announcing they were being given priority landing due to the medical emergency on board. Vanessa remained in the galley, her earlier confidence replaced by visible nervousness as she watched passengers sending video, clips and messages before the landing. As the plane touched down, Amara cradled her daughter, who was now conscious but disoriented after the small seizure had passed. "You're okay, baby," she whispered. "We're landing now. Help is coming." Emergency medical personnel were waiting as the aircraft arrived at the gate. Unlike in Atlanta, this time there was no delay in deplaning. With Vanessa nowhere to be seen, other flight attendants efficiently assisted in getting Zara safely off the plane and into the care of the waiting paramedics. As they were wheeled toward the terminal, Amara looked back to see the Schultzes following close behind, along with several passengers still recording with their phones. In the jetway entrance stood Vanessa, her face a mask of barely controlled fury as she watched her actions being documented and shared in real time. The medical team quickly stabilized Zara, and one of the paramedics mentioned that they had already received calls from concerned passengers about a child needing specific medication. "We've got lorazepam ready," the paramedic assured Amara. "Someone on the plane used the Wi-Fi to alert us before you landed." As they were loaded into an ambulance, Amara caught a glimpse of Richard Schultz speaking intensely with airport security, pointing repeatedly toward the gate where Vanessa still stood. The last thing she saw before the ambulance doors closed was Emma waving, her young face set with determination as she held up her own phone, showing that she too had captured everything. What would you do if you witnessed a flight attendant putting a child in danger like Vanessa did to Zara? Comment. Number 1, if you'd record and report the incident to airline management, or number 2, if you'd confront the flight attendant directly. Don't forget to hit that like button if you believe people who abuse their authority should face consequences, and subscribe to follow Zara's journey as she fights back against injustice. How far do you think this story will go now that passengers have video evidence? And what will happen when the world sees how Vanessa treated an innocent disabled child? The power of social media is about to change everything. Zara was discharged from Huntsville Hospital just after midnight, the emergency medication having prevented any further seizures. The attending physician had been appalled by their story, documenting the incident as a case of medical negligence and providing copies for Amara's records. Their hotel, originally booked for tomorrow night before space camp began, had fortunately allowed them to check in early when they heard about the situation. "Try to get some sleep, baby," Amara said, tucking Zara into bed. "Tomorrow will be better." But sleep proved elusive for Amara. At 3 a.m., her phone began buzzing with notifications. Opening her social media accounts, she was stunned to see clips from the flight appearing on every platform. Whereas Flying While Black and Justice for Zara were already trending, with thousands of shares and comments expressing outrage at Vanessa's behavior. By morning, the story had exploded. National news outlets were running segments showing the cell phone footage, particularly damning clips of Vanessa refusing medical assistance and callously dismissing Zara's condition. The airline's social media accounts were flooded with angry comments demanding action. At 9 a.m., Delta Airlines released a statement. "We are aware of the incident involving one of our flight attendants and a young passenger. We take all allegations of misconduct seriously and are conducting a thorough investigation. The employee in question has been placed on administrative leave pending the results of this investigation." The statement's carefully neutral wording and lack of a direct apology only fueled public outrage. By noon, the story had gone international, with media outlets from around the world picking up on what was being characterized as a blatant case of both racism and ableism. Amara's phone rang. It was Caroline Schultz. "Have you seen the news?" she asked without preamble. "It's everywhere," Amara replied, still in disbelief. "I never expected this kind of response. People recognize injustice when they see it," Caroline said. "But there's something you should know. Vanessa is fighting back." She directed Amara to a conservative news channel's website, where Vanessa Winters was being interviewed, tearfully claiming she was the victim of a race hoax, orchestrated to get social media fame and set up a lucrative lawsuit. "I was just doing my job," Vanessa insisted in the interview. The mother was combative from the start, refusing to follow basic safety instructions. When her daughter had what appeared to be a medical issue, "I followed all protocols. Now I'm receiving death threats and being painted as a monster because of manipulated video clips and a false narrative." "She's lying through her teeth," Amara said, outraged. "We have dozens of witnesses. And their testimonies are coming in," Caroline assured her. "Richard has been in contact with the Airline's board of directors. They're in crisis mode, but Vanessa has her supporters too." This became painfully clear when Amara checked her own social media accounts to find a flood of hateful messages from Vanessa's defenders, accusing her of everything from child exploitation to terrorism. Some had even discovered her workplace and were calling for her firing. A call from Space Camp temporarily diverted her attention. "Ms. Morgan, this is William Foster, camp director at Space Camp. I'm calling about Zara's registration." Amara tensed, expecting bad news, but was surprised by Foster's diplomatic tone. "I want to assure you that Zara's place is secure," he said carefully. "We've been made aware of yesterday's unfortunate incident, and we want you to know that Space Camp values diversity and inclusion. Zara's academic achievements speak for themselves, and we're looking forward to having her join us." The carefully worded statement sounded supportive, but Amara detected an undercurrent of discomfort. "Thank you, Mr. Foster. Will there be any security concerns given the media attention?" "We have excellent security," Foster assured her, though his tone suggested he wasn't thrilled about the situation. "We're used to having high-profile students. Just, perhaps we could keep things low-key during her stay? For everyone's comfort." After hanging up, Amara felt uneasy. The camp wasn't canceling Zara's spot, but they clearly weren't happy about the publicity. She was considering the implications when another call came through, this one from the CEO's office at Delta Airlines. "Ms. Morgan, Robert Kingsley, CEO of Delta. I wanted to personally extend my deepest apologies for your experience on our flights yesterday. What happened was unacceptable and does not reflect our company values." The apology sounded sincere, but the follow-up revealed the true purpose of the call. "Our legal team would like to arrange a meeting to discuss a resolution that would be satisfactory to all parties involved. Perhaps we could put this unfortunate incident behind us." "By resolution, you mean a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement?" Amara clarified, her years of dealing with hospital administration making her adept at reading between the lines. "We would want to make things right," Kingsley replied smoothly, neither confirming nor denying. "For you and your daughter." When Zara woke up later that morning, Amara tried to shield her from the social media storm, but it proved impossible. Zara's own school friends were messaging her about the videos, and news vans had already discovered their hotel. "Mom, I don't want to be famous for this," Zara said, overwhelmed by the attention. "I just wanted to go to Space Camp." "I know, baby, and you will," Amara promised, though she wasn't entirely sure how they would navigate the media circus that awaited them. A text message from Emma brought welcome news. The Schultz family had arrived at the same hotel and invited them for breakfast. In the restaurant, safely away from the reporters gathering outside, Richard updated them on the situation. "The airline is in full damage control mode," he explained. "My contact on the board says they've never seen anything like this. The video of Vanessa refusing medical help has been viewed over 20 million times in less than 10 hours. What about Vanessa? Is she really receiving threats?" Amara asked, concerned despite everything. She's playing the victim card hard, Caroline said. And unfortunately, it's working in certain circles. The story is being politicized, with conservative media casting doubt on your account, and liberal media holding it up as an example of systemic racism. We just wanted to go to space camp, Amara repeated her daughter's sentiment, feeling overwhelmed. And you will, Richard said firmly. Emma is so excited to have Zara in her group. We've arranged for private security to accompany you both to and from the camp daily. No reporters will bother you there. You didn't have to do that, Amara protested. Yes, we did, Caroline said simply. This is bigger than just one bad flight attendant now. This is about standing up against discrimination in all its forms. As they finished breakfast, Amara's phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made her stomach drop. Flight attendant in viral video returns to work. Airline cites insufficient evidence of wrongdoing. Despite the dozens of witnesses, despite the video evidence, despite everything, Vanessa Winters was being protected. The statement from her union representative claimed she would be back in the skies within a week. After a brief cooling-off period, they're not going to fire her, Amara realized. They're just waiting for the story to die down. Richard's expression darkened. Not if we have anything to say about it. As they left the restaurant, Emma hugged Zara tightly. Don't worry, she whispered. My dad knows important people. They won't get away with this. Looking at her daughter embracing her new friend, Amara felt a complex mixture of emotions. Pride in Zara's resilience, gratitude for their unexpected allies, but also deep apprehension. This was no longer just about one terrible flight experience. They had inadvertently stepped into a much larger battle, one with forces aligned against them that they were only beginning to comprehend. And somewhere in the city, Vanessa Winters was watching the coverage, planning her next move, more dangerous than ever now that she had been publicly humiliated. The thought sent a chill down Amara's spine. Something told her that the worst was yet to come. The next morning, Amara and Zara arrived at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center for the start of space camp, accompanied by the private security guard the Schultz family had arranged. The imposing Saturn V rocket that towered over the complex would normally have filled Zara with awe, but today she seemed withdrawn, her usual enthusiasm dampened by the events of the past 48 hours. You don't have to do this if you're not feeling up to it, Amara said gently as they approached the registration desk. We could go home. Try again another time. Zara squared her shoulders, a flash of determination crossing her face. No, I've been waiting for this my whole life. I'm not letting her take this from me, too. At registration, they were greeted with professional courtesy, though Amara couldn't help noticing the whispers and glances from staff who clearly recognized them from the news. They were directed to the welcome orientation in the main auditorium, where dozens of excited children and their parents were gathering. Emma spotted them immediately, waving enthusiastically from the front row where she sat with her parents. The Schultzes had saved seats for them, creating a small island of support in what felt like uncertain territory. As they settled in, the camp director, William Foster, took the stage. A tall man with silver hair and a military bearing, Foster welcomed the new campers with practiced enthusiasm, outlining the week's activities and introducing key staff members. His gaze swept over the audience, briefly pausing when it reached Zara and Amara, his smile tightening almost imperceptibly. After the orientation, as families began dispersing to various check-in stations, Foster approached them directly. Ms. Morgan, Zara. He greeted them with a handshake that seemed a fraction too brief. Could I have a word in private? In Foster's office, away from the bustle of orientation, his demeanor changed. Ms. Morgan, I want to be direct with you. While we welcome Zara's participation based on her impressive academic credentials, I'm concerned about the attention your situation has attracted. What exactly are you concerned about, Mr. Foster? Amara asked carefully. Space Camp has a sterling reputation that we've built over decades, Foster explained, his tone measured. We host children from all backgrounds, including those from politically connected families and the children of NASA executives. The media circus surrounding your incident could be disruptive to the educational experience of all our campers. Amara felt her defenses rise. My daughter was discriminated against and medically endangered. That's not a situation or an incident. It's a crime. Foster's expression hardened slightly. I'm not disputing your experience, Ms. Morgan. I'm simply concerned about its impact here. Perhaps Zara might be more comfortable withdrawing and returning another time, when things have settled down. Are you asking us to leave? Amara asked incredulously. I'm suggesting it might be in everyone's best interest, Foster clarified. Of course, we would provide a full refund. Before Amara could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. It was Dr. Caroline Schultz, her timing suspiciously perfect. I'm sorry to interrupt, Caroline said, though her expression suggested she wasn't sorry at all. Emma is waiting for Zara to join their aerospace engineering group. They're being assigned project partners now. Foster's expression flashed with annoyance before settling back into professional neutrality. Dr. Schultz, I was just discussing some concerns with Ms. Morgan. I overheard, Caroline interrupted coolly. And as a major donor to this facility's STEM education fund, I'm concerned about what I'm hearing. Suggesting that a qualified student withdraw because she was the victim of discrimination seems contrary to Space Camp's stated values of inclusion. The mention of her donor status had an immediate effect on Foster. I assure you, Dr. Schultz, I was merely expressing concern for Zara's comfort given the media attention. Zara will be perfectly comfortable pursuing her passion for aerospace engineering, Caroline stated firmly, and I'll be personally monitoring the situation to ensure that's the case. Foster conceded with a tight smile, and Zara was escorted to join her group, where Emma was indeed waiting impatiently. As the girls departed, Caroline turned to Amara. I had a feeling we should keep an eye on him, she said quietly. Something felt off about his call to you yesterday. Over the next few days, Zara threw herself into the space camp experience, gradually reclaiming her excitement as she tackled simulator training, rocket building, and mission planning exercises. She and Emma had become inseparable, their shared passion for science creating a strong bond. Other campers had been curious about Zara's newfound fame at first, but most had quickly moved on to the excitement of space exploration. Not everyone was so accepting, however. Amara, who had opted to volunteer at the camp instead of leaving Zara alone, noticed that certain instructors seemed to grade Zara more harshly than other students, finding fault with work that appeared flawless to her untrained eye. When she mentioned this to Richard Schultz during one of their now regular dinners, he frowned thoughtfully. It might be paranoia after everything you've been through, he said, but let me do some digging. The next day, Richard sought out Amara during lunch break, his expression grim. I found something you should know. William Foster is Vanessa Winter's brother-in-law. His wife is her sister. What? Amara gasped. That can't be a coincidence. It's not, Richard confirmed. I did some social media research. They're quite close. There are photos of them together at family events as recently as last month. This revelation cast Foster's attempt to remove Zara from the camp in a sinister new light. It wasn't about media disruption, it was personal. Despite this discovery, Zara continued to excel. Her project for the camp's final competition, an innovative design for improving emergency evacuation systems in space habitats, was drawing attention from actual NASA engineers who served as guest judges. Her instructor, Dr. Patel, one of the few staff members who had been consistently fair, privately told Amara that it was one of the most impressive designs he'd seen from a camper in years. The night before the final presentations, Zara stayed late in the engineering lab, putting the finishing touches on her prototype with Emma's help. When they finally returned to their dormitory, Zara was bubbling with excitement. Mom, Dr. Patel thinks my design could actually be implemented in future habitats. He's going to introduce me to the lead engineer from Marshall Space Flight Center tomorrow. Amara hadn't seen her daughter this animated since before their disastrous flight. I'm so proud of you, baby. Get some sleep now. Tomorrow's your big day. But when they arrived at the lab the next morning, chaos awaited them. Zara's project, the prototype, the detailed plans, the presentation materials, was gone. Her designated workspace had been completely cleared out. Where's my project? Zara asked in panic, searching desperately around her station. It was right here last night. Dr. Patel was equally baffled. Security locks the lab at 10 p.m. No one should have been able to enter without authorization. A security review was hastily arranged, but the lab's camera footage for the crucial hours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. had been accidentally erased during a system maintenance check. Foster appeared, expressing what sounded like rehearsed concern. "This is most unfortunate," he said, his sympathy not reaching his eyes. "Perhaps it was mistakenly discarded by the cleaning staff. Without your project, I'm afraid you won't be able to participate in today's judging." Emma, standing protectively beside Zara, suddenly spoke up. "She can use my backup materials. We were working together last night, and I saved copies of all her designs on my tablet." Foster's expression flickered with annoyance. "That would constitute outside help, which is against competition rules." "Actually," Dr. Patel interjected, "the rules allow for collaboration during the design phase. Only the final execution must be individual work. If Zara can reconstruct her project using her own backed-up designs, that's perfectly within the guidelines." What followed was an incredible display of solidarity. Emma offered her tablet with the saved files. Other campers, moved by Zara's situation, volunteered materials, and help. Dr. Patel rearranged the presentation schedule to give Zara extra time. Through the night, with Amara, the Schultzes, and several new friends helping, Zara recreated her project. By morning, exhausted but triumphant, she had a functioning prototype ready for judging. Foster, who had clearly expected her to withdraw, was visibly displeased when she appeared at the competition. The judging began, with each student presenting their projects to a panel that included NASA engineers, space camp instructors, and Foster himself. When Zara's turn came, she rolled her wheelchair to the front with confidence, her voice clear and strong as she explained her emergency evacuation system designed specifically to assist disabled astronauts in crisis situations. The NASA judges were visibly impressed, asking detailed technical questions that Zara answered with expertise beyond her years. One judge, a veteran engineer named Dr. Simmons, was particularly enthusiastic, noting that accessibility in space design was an overlooked but critical area. When the results were announced, Zara's name was called for first place. The audience erupted in applause, all except Foster, who remained seated, his expression stony. As Zara rolled forward to accept her award, Foster stood to present it, protocol requiring him to shake her hand. In full view of everyone, including several recording phones, he hesitated before extending his hand in a perfunctory gesture, barely touching her fingers before withdrawing quickly. The moment was not lost on the audience, nor on the NASA officials present. Dr. Simmons, who had been preparing to offer Zara a special mentorship opportunity, watched the interaction with narrowed eyes. Later, as the ceremony concluded, he approached Amara. "Ms. Morgan, your daughter has extraordinary talent," he said sincerely, "but I'm concerned about what I just witnessed. That was not the space camp welcome, I know." Amara sighed. "It's been a challenging week. The camp director is related to the flight attendant from the incident you may have heard about." Dr. Simmons raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Interesting." He handed her his business card. "Please have Zara contact me directly about the mentorship program. I'd like to work with her regardless of any institutional politics." As they packed to return to their hotel that evening, Amara felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride in Zara's achievement and resilience, gratitude for the allies they'd found, but also a deep concern. The connection between Vanessa and Foster confirmed her suspicion that they were facing something more organized than one prejudiced flight attendant. There were networks at work, people in positions of power protecting each other. Zara, clutching her first-place medal, seemed to read her thoughts. "It's not over, is it, Mom?" Amara pulled her daughter into a tight hug. "No, baby. I'm afraid it's just beginning." 3 days after Zara's triumph at Space Camp, just as they were preparing to return to Chicago, a courier delivered an envelope to their hotel room. Inside was a legal notice. Vanessa Winters was suing Amara and Zara Morgan for defamation, seeking $5 million in damages for irreparable harm to her professional reputation and emotional distress resulting from false accusations and manipulated social media content. Amara stared at the document in disbelief. She's suing us? After what she did? The lawsuit claimed that Amara had orchestrated the entire incident to create a viral moment and set up a lucrative discrimination lawsuit against the airline. Characterized Zara's medical episode as theatrics coached by her mother, and cited expert opinions questioning whether Zara's condition required the accommodations Amara had demanded. "This is insane," Amara said, hands shaking as she read. "We have video evidence, we have witnesses, we have medical documentation." A call to Richard Schultz confirmed what Amara already suspected. This was a strategic counterattack. "It's a common tactic," Richard explained grimly. "File a lawsuit first, control the narrative, force you to spend resources defending yourself instead of pursuing your own case. But how can she afford this? Flight attendants don't make enough to pursue multi-million-dollar lawsuits." "She's not paying for it," Richard said. "My contacts at the airline say that while they're publicly claiming neutrality, certain executives are quietly backing Vanessa with legal resources. They're afraid of the precedent your case could set." The news got worse. That afternoon, Amara received an email from her supervisor at Chicago Memorial Hospital. "In light of recent events and the negative publicity surrounding your social media activities, the hospital administration has decided to conduct a review of your position. You are placed on administrative leave effective immediately, pending the results of this review." "They're firing me?" Amara said aloud to the empty hotel room, Zara having gone for a final visit with Emma before their departure. "For what? Being discriminated against?" A quick call revealed the disturbing connection. The chairman of the hospital board was a golfing buddy of Robert Kingsley, Delta's CEO. The message was clear: back down or lose everything. The final blow came that evening. Their landlord called to inform them that a routine inspection had found several code violations in their apartment building that required immediate, expensive repairs. All tenants would need to vacate for at least 30 days, with no guarantee of return. "This can't be happening," Amara whispered, sitting on the edge of the hotel bed as the full weight of the coordinated attack became clear. Without her job, without their home and now facing an expensive lawsuit, they were being systematically stripped of resources and stability. When Zara returned from her outing with Emma, Amara tried to put on a brave face, but her daughter was too perceptive. "What's wrong, Mom?" she asked immediately. "You've been crying." Amara considered shielding Zara from the truth but decided against it. They were in this together. She explained the lawsuit, her job situation, and their housing problem as gently as possible, watching Zara's expression shift from confusion to understanding to determination. "They're trying to scare us into giving up," Zara said with surprising clarity. "Like when Foster tried to get me to withdraw from the competition." "Yes, baby, and I'm not sure how we fight this. These people have resources and connections we don't." "But we have the truth," Zara insisted. "And we have the Schultzes and Mr. Whitfield and all those people online who supported us." As if on cue, Amara's phone rang. It was Caroline Schultz, calling with news that seemed almost too fortunate to be coincidental. "We've found someone who wants to help you," Caroline said without preamble. "His name is Elijah Washington. He's a civil rights attorney specializing in discrimination cases, and he's one of the best." "Caroline, I appreciate this, but I can't afford a lawyer right now. I've just been suspended from my job and—" "He's taking the case pro bono," Caroline interrupted. "He sees what's happening for what it is. A powerful corporation using its resources to silence a victim of discrimination. He's outraged, and he wants to fight." The next morning, they met with Elijah Washington in his hotel suite before their flights home. In his early 50s, with a commanding presence honed from decades in courtrooms, Washington had the careful speech of someone who weighs every word. "What's happening to you is not unusual, Ms. Morgan," he explained after reviewing their situation. "When individuals challenge powerful interests, those interests often respond with overwhelming force. They're betting you'll fold under the pressure." "It's working," Amara admitted. I don't know how we'll even keep a roof over our heads, let alone fight a legal battle." "That's where I come in," Washington said confidently. "I've been investigating Ms. Winters since your story broke. This isn't her first incident, just the first one that went viral." He opened a folder containing documentation of previous complaints against Vanessa Winters, dating back several years. Each followed a pattern. Minority passengers, especially those with disabilities or those who had requested special accommodations, reporting rude and discriminatory treatment. In every case, the airline had quietly settled or dismissed the complaints. "They've been protecting her for years," Washington explained. "The question is why? A corporation typically doesn't risk its reputation to shield one mid-level employee, unless there's more at stake." The attorney's investigation had uncovered something else. A pattern of former employees who had filed complaints against Vanessa, suddenly retracting their statements after unexplained interventions. "Yesterday, I received a call from a former flight attendant who worked with Ms. Winters for 3 years, Washington continued. She described multiple instances of racist comments and discriminatory behavior. She agreed to sign an affidavit. But this morning she called back in tears, refusing to speak with me again. She was threatened, Amara guessed. "Almost certainly," Washington nodded. "But it confirms we're on the right track. They're scrambling because they know they're vulnerable." As they prepared to part ways, the Morgans to Chicago, the Schultzes to Boston, and Washington to his office in Atlanta, Richard pulled Amara aside. "There's something else you should know," he said quietly. "The airline has been making calls about settlement options." "Settlement?" Amara repeated. "They're suing us." "That's Vanessa's lawsuit, technically separate from the airline," Richard explained. "Behind the scenes, Delta is exploring a resolution that would make all of this go away. My contact on the board says they're prepared to offer a substantial sum." "How substantial?" Amara asked, her financial situation suddenly precarious. "7 figures," Richard replied. "But it would come with an aggressive non-disclosure agreement. You'd never be able to speak about what happened, and all the social media posts would have to be removed." The offer was tempting, especially given their circumstances. With that kind of money, they could secure their future, pay for Zara's college, buy a new home. But it would mean Vanessa and the airline escaping any real accountability. It would mean silence. "I need to think about it," Amara said honestly. "Zara's future has to come first." Back in Chicago, they found temporary housing in a small extended-stay hotel on the city's outskirts, a far cry from their comfortable apartment near the hospital. Zara returned to school, only to find that her viral fame had followed her. Some classmates were supportive, others uncomfortably curious, and a few parroted their parents' skepticism about the race card being played. Meanwhile, the media coverage was shifting. Opinion pieces questioning Amara's motives began appearing. In major outlets, a deep dive into her financial history revealed student loan debt and a previous bankruptcy following her husband's death. Facts presented to suggest she might have fabricated the discrimination claims for financial gain. When a reporter ambushed Amara outside the hotel, shouting questions about her financial motivations, Zara witnessed it all, her young face crumpling at the hostile insinuations. That evening, as they ate takeout food in their cramped hotel room, Zara asked the question Amara had been dreading. "Should we take the money, Mom? Make it all stop?" Before Amara could answer, her phone rang. It was Elijah Washington, his normally composed voice tight with controlled anger. "My office was broken into last night," he reported without preamble. "The only things taken were files related to your case and my computer that contained our research on Vanessa Winters and the airline." "Oh my God," Amara gasped. "Did you call the police?" "Of course." But the detective assigned to the case took one look around and dismissed it as a random burglary, despite the selective nature of what was taken. He claimed drug addicts were probably looking for electronics and just grabbed random papers. "That doesn't make any sense," Amara said. "No, it doesn't," Washington agreed grimly, "especially since my office is in a secure building with surveillance cameras that were malfunctioning during the exact time frame of the break-in." The implications were chilling. This wasn't just a powerful corporation using its legal resources. This was crossing into potentially criminal territory. The next day brought more disturbing news. James Whitfield, the retired airline executive who had helped them in Atlanta, called to report that he was suddenly being audited by the IRS and had received anonymous threatening calls warning him to stay out of other people's business. Several airline employees who had submitted statements supporting Amara's account were disciplined for protocol violations, unrelated to her case but suspiciously timed. Conrad Phillips, Vanessa's supervisor who had backed her story, was promoted to regional director. The FAA investigation that had been launched based on passenger complaints had mysteriously stalled, with the inspector originally assigned to the case suddenly reassigned to a different region. Even Zara wasn't immune. Her school reported sudden concerns about her academic performance despite her consistently excellent record. The principal, previously supportive, now suggested that Zara's extracurricular activities, meaning the media attention, might be distracting her from her studies. Most alarming was the call from social services that Amara received, informing her that they had received an anonymous tip about her parenting, triggering a mandatory investigation. The social worker who visited their hotel room was professional, but thorough, asking pointed questions about Zara's medical care and noting their temporary housing situation with evident concern. "They're coming at us from every angle," Amara told Washington during their nightly update call. "It feels like we're fighting ghosts. You can't see who's behind it, but they're everywhere." Washington had been researching the connections between the airline and various institutions now causing problems for the Morgans. He discovered that Robert Kingsley, Delta's CEO, sat on several boards with powerful figures in Chicago, including, most disturbingly, the chairman of the hospital board, where Amara worked. "It's a small world at the top," Washington explained. "These people golf together, attend the same charity galas, serve on the same boards. When one of them is threatened, they close ranks." The final blow came when Amara received an official letter from the hospital. Due to unrelated performance issues identified during her administrative leave review, her employment was being terminated, effective immediately. That night, alone in the bathroom where Zara couldn't hear her, Amara finally broke down. The systematic dismantling of their lives seemed complete. Her career was in tatters, their home gone, their reputations under attack, and now even Zara's. Education and welfare were being weaponized against them. The settlement offer from the airline, delivered through back channels, sat on the cheap hotel desk like a ticking bomb. The number had increased, now 8 figures, a life-changing sum that would secure their future forever. All they had to do was sign away their right to ever speak about what had happened, delete all social media posts, and issue a carefully worded statement walking back their claims of discrimination. When Amara emerged from the bathroom, eyes red but resolve hardening, Zara was sitting cross-legged on her bed, laptop open to a document she was typing. "What are you working on, baby?" Amara asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "My statement," Zara replied without looking up. "If I say that I was confused about what happened on the plane, that maybe Ms. Winters was just doing her job and we misunderstood because of my medical condition, would they leave us alone? Would you get your job back?" The sight of her 11-year-old daughter strategizing about how to surrender her truth to protect their family broke something in Amara. This wasn't just about them anymore. This was about every person who had ever been silenced by power and money, every child who learned that standing up for yourself was punished while injustice was rewarded. "No, baby," Amara said, sitting beside Zara and closing the laptop gently. "We're not going to do that. What happened to us was wrong, and pretending it wasn't would be another wrong." "But they're hurting us, Mom," Zara whispered. "They took your job. They're saying bad things about us." "I know," Amara acknowledged, "and it's scary and unfair. But some things matter more than comfort or safety. Sometimes the truth matters more than anything." Zara looked up at her mother, eyes searching. "What if they take me away from you?" The social worker lady was writing a lot of notes. "That won't happen," Amara promised, hoping it was true. "We have people on our side too. The Schultzes, Mr. Washington, Mr. Whitfield. And most importantly, we have the truth." But as she held her daughter that night, Amara wondered if the truth alone would be enough against the machinery of power now aligned against them. The system was fighting back with everything it had, and they were running out of resources and allies with each passing day. Have you ever stood up for what's right, only to find the whole system turning against you? Comment number 1. If you believe Amara should keep fighting for justice despite the consequences. Or number 2, if you think she should accept the settlement to protect her family. Don't forget to hit that like button if you believe in standing up against systematics, discrimination, and subscribe for the next part of this shocking true story. With powerful forces working against them from every angle, what chance do Amara and Zara really have? And who might step forward as the unexpected ally they desperately need? The most shocking twist in this case is about to be revealed. The systematic campaign against Amara and Zara intensified over the following weeks. What had begun as a confrontation with one prejudiced flight attendant had morphed into what felt like a coordinated assault from all sides. Elijah Washington's office suffered a second break-in, this time more brazen. The intruders bypassed other valuable items and targeted only case files and computers related to the Morgan case. The investigating detective, a different officer than before, took perfunctory notes and suggested installing better security rather than pursuing the case aggressively. This isn't a random burglary, Washington insisted during his interview with the detective. This is targeted theft of specific legal materials related to an active discrimination case. The detective, a heavy-set man with an air of disinterest, barely looked up from his notepad. Without evidence pointing to specific perpetrators, Mr. Washington, this remains classified as a standard burglary. We'll increase patrols in the area. When Washington pushed further, questioning why surveillance footage was once again malfunctioning during the exact time frame of the break-in, the detective's demeanor shifted subtly. You know, counselor, making false accusations against police could be considered obstruction, he said with quiet menace. I'd hate to see your bar license come under review. The threat was clear. Back off or face consequences. It was a pattern repeating with disturbing frequency across every aspect of their case. James Whitfield called to report that his IRS audit had escalated to include the last 7 years of his financial records. Anonymous callers had begun contacting his neighbors, suggesting he was under investigation for fraud. His car was vandalized with the word snitch scratched into the paint. They're trying to make an example of me, he told Amara during a carefully conducted call on a burner phone Washington had provided. The message is clear: stand with you, and you'll be destroyed. Despite the intimidation, Whitfield remained resolute. I didn't stand up to discrimination for 40 years in the airline industry just to back down now. These tactics only confirm we're on the right track. Inside the airline, the campaign against supportive witnesses continued. 3 flight attendants who had submitted statements corroborating Amara's account suddenly recanted, citing confusion about what they had observed. Their reversals came immediately after each had private meetings with airline management about career advancement opportunities. First Officer Marcus Chen, who had quietly apologized to Amara during the initial flight and later provided a statement about Vanessa's behavior, became the most significant loss. Washington had arranged for his deposition, considering his testimony critical since he had observed Vanessa's conduct from a position of authority. The evening before his scheduled deposition, Chen called Washington's office, his voice strained. I can't do it, he said simply. I'm sorry. When pressed, he reluctantly revealed that he had been offered early promotion to captain, a jump ahead of dozens of more senior pilots, contingent on his reconsideration of certain recollections regarding Flight 1827. I have 3 kids in college, Chen explained, shame evident in his voice. This promotion means an additional $60,000 annually. I can't sacrifice my family's future. While witnesses were being picked off one by one, the legal assault continued relentlessly. Vanessa's defamation lawsuit expanded to include additional claims and defendants, now naming the Schultz family for their conspiracy to damage her reputation, and even targeting James Whitfield for his interference with her employment relationship. The strategy was clear: isolate the Morgans by making support for them costly and dangerous. It was working. Former allies began distancing themselves, media coverage waned as reporters moved on to fresher stories, and public support dwindled. In the face of the counter-narrative being pushed by Vanessa's supporters, even Elijah Washington faced mounting pressure. His law partners called an emergency meeting, concerned about the firm's reputation and the resources being devoted to a pro bono case that was generating powerful enemies. The consensus is that we need to refer this case to another firm, the senior partner informed Washington. It's becoming a liability to our corporate practice. Washington refused. I'll take it as a personal case then. This is too important to abandon. Elijah, the senior partner said, his tone softening to one of genuine concern. Think about what you're doing. These people play hardball. Your name is on the door of this firm, but votes can change that. The threat to his life's work was real, but Washington remained unmoved. Some things matter more than a name on a door, Harold. If standing up for what's right costs me my partnership, so be it. His principled stand came with a cost. Without the firm's resources, Washington was fighting an increasingly one-sided battle against a team of corporate attorneys with seemingly unlimited funding. Critical deadlines approached for filings he now had to prepare without support staff, working through nights in a small temporary office he had rented. For Amara and Zara, daily life had become a series of small and large indignities. The social services investigation dragged on, with repeated surprise visits to their hotel room and intrusive questioning about Amara's finances, Zara's medical care, and their living conditions. The investigator seemed determined to find fault, noting the unstable housing situation and Amara's unemployment as concerns in her reports. School had become a battlefield for Zara. Once celebrated for her academic achievements, she now found herself under unprecedented scrutiny. Teachers, who had previously praised her work, now found reasons to criticize it. Her science project on aerospace engineering, once her pride and scheduled for the regional competition, was disqualified on a technicality about submission formatting. The principal, who had once written a glowing recommendation for her space camp application, now suggested that her emotional state might warrant counseling and a reduced academic load. When Amara attended a parent-teacher conference to address these concerns, she was met with thinly veiled hostility. Zara seems preoccupied with being perceived as a victim, her homeroom teacher commented, avoiding Amara's direct gaze. It's affecting her ability to integrate with other students. She is a victim, Amara pointed out sharply. She was discriminated against and medically endangered, and now she's watching our entire lives being dismantled as punishment for speaking up. The teacher's expression remained carefully neutral. Perhaps a fresh start at another school would be beneficial for everyone. The message was consistent across every front: surrender, settle, disappear, or face escalating consequences. Financial pressures mounted relentlessly. With her nursing career effectively blacklisted, no Chicago hospital would touch her application. Once they learned her name, Amara had taken a minimum wage job at a convenience store to keep them afloat. Their savings were rapidly depleting, with legal expenses and the higher cost of their extended stay housing draining what little remained. The settlement offer from Delta remained on the table, the figure now climbing to truly life-changing amounts. Each time Amara wavered, considering Zara's future and their deteriorating situation, Washington counseled patience. They're increasing the offer because they're scared, he explained. Something bigger is at stake here. The harder they push, the more certain I am that we're close to uncovering what they're really protecting. His investigation had revealed tantalizing fragments of a larger pattern. Vanessa Winters wasn't just a random prejudiced employee. She was connected to higher-level executives through family and social ties. Her brother-in-law, William Foster, at Space Camp, was just one strand in a web that seemed to extend throughout the company's power structure. The breakthrough they needed remained elusive, however. Each potential witness was silenced, each document, request stonewalled, each formal complaint mysteriously stalled in bureaucratic processes. The most disturbing development came when Washington spotted Vanessa having dinner with Judge Eleanor Harmon, the judge assigned to their case. The attorney managed to discreetly photograph the meeting from across the restaurant, but when he filed a motion for the judge to recuse herself due to the apparent conflict of interest, Judge Harmon denied it, claiming the dinner was a chance encounter with a casual acquaintance rather than anything improper. The ruling effectively prevented them from using the photograph as evidence of judicial bias, leaving them at the mercy of a judge who appeared to have already chosen sides. As the date for a critical hearing approached, one that would determine whether Vanessa's lawsuit could proceed while simultaneously addressing the Morgans' counterclaims, Amara's health began to deteriorate under the constant stress. Headaches and insomnia gave way to panic attacks and dangerously elevated blood pressure. During a particularly contentious deposition where Vanessa's attorneys grilled her for 8 hours about her history of financial problems and motivation for creating a viral racial incident, Amara collapsed. Zara, who had been waiting in an adjacent room with a volunteer from Washington's church, witnessed her mother being carried out on a stretcher, an oxygen mask covering her face. For an 11-year-old who had already lost her father, the sight was devastating. At the hospital, doctors warned Amara about the effects of prolonged stress on her cardiovascular system. "Whatever you're dealing with," the emergency physician advised, "it's not worth your life. Your daughter needs you healthy." That night, as Amara recovered in the hospital, Zara sat alone in their hotel room, the social worker having arranged for temporary supervision. The young girl opened her laptop and began typing what she never thought she would: a complete retraction of their claims against Vanessa and the airline. "I, Zara Morgan, wish to clarify that events on Delta Flight 1827 were not as previously described," she wrote with tears streaming down her face. "Ms. Winters was performing her duties professionally, and any misunderstanding was due to my medical condition causing confusion." She continued crafting the surrender document, believing that sacrificing their truth was the only way to save her mother's life and what remained of their family. As she typed, her Space Camp medal lay on the desk beside her laptop, a reminder of what she had accomplished despite the obstacles and what she was now preparing to deny. The system had won. The machinery of power, with its infinite resources and reach, had successfully crushed a nurse and her disabled daughter for the crime of demanding basic dignity and respect. By morning, Zara planned to email her statement to Washington with instructions to use it however necessary to make the nightmare end. But as dawn broke over Chicago, an unexpected package arrived at Washington's temporary office, a plain manila envelope with no return address, delivered by overnight courier. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note that would change everything. "I can't live with this anymore. The truth needs to be told, no matter the cost. Sandra Pierce." When Washington plugged in the drive, he found himself staring at what they had been seeking for months, the smoking gun that would blow the entire case wide open. The USB contained hundreds of internal emails, memos, and recorded conversations meticulously documented by Sandra Pierce, Vanessa Winters' executive assistant for the past 5 years. The evidence revealed an orchestrated campaign not just against the Morgans, but against dozens of minority passengers who had filed complaints over the years. Washington worked through the night, organizing the evidence and preparing an emergency filing to the court. By morning, he had compiled an irrefutable case showing that the airline had systematically covered up Vanessa's discriminatory behavior while retaliating against those who reported it. At 7 a.m., he called Amara's hospital room. "We've got them," he said simply. "Everything. And you won't believe who sent it." Sandra Pierce sat nervously in Washington's temporary office, her hands trembling as she sipped a cup of coffee. At 45, with 20 years in the airline industry, she had risked everything by turning whistleblower. "I should have done this years ago," she admitted, her voice quiet with shame. "But I was afraid. Vanessa has powerful friends, and people who cross her tend to lose their jobs. Or worse." "What changed?" Washington asked gently. "Your little girl," Sandra said, looking at Amara. "When I saw those videos, when I heard that Vanessa had endangered a child's health, I just couldn't be part of it anymore. The night she came back to the office celebrating how they were crushing that troublemaking family, something broke inside me." Sandra's evidence was devastating in its thoroughness. As Vanessa's assistant, she had access to emails, scheduling, and private conversations that revealed a pattern extending far beyond the Morgans. "Vanessa targets minorities, especially those with disabilities or special requests," Sandra explained. "She sees them as entitled and playing the victim card. But what you don't know is that she's protected because she's part of a larger problem at Delta. The documents revealed that several senior executives, including CEO Robert Kingsley, had been using the airline's resources to cover up not just Vanessa's behavior, but a systematic pattern of discrimination that, if exposed, would open the company to massive class action liability. They've settled dozens of cases quietly over the years, Sandra continued. Vanessa is just the most blatant offender. The company protects her because if she's held accountable, it could unravel the whole system. Most damning was a recorded conversation between Vanessa and Robert Kingsley discussing the Morgan case specifically. "These people need to be taught a lesson," Kingsley's voice said clearly on the recording. "Use whatever resources you need. We can't afford to have passengers thinking they can go viral every time they don't get exactly what they want." "I've already reached out to Bill at Space Camp," Vanessa replied. "And Conrad is handling the, paperwork to ensure her medical claims are questioned. How far do you want me to go with this?" "All the way," Kingsley answered. "Make an example of them. Nobody challenges this airline and wins." As they reviewed the evidence, another bombshell emerged. Flight data from the original Chicago to Atlanta flight confirmed Zara's earlier suspicions about unusual turbulence patterns. The pilot had deliberately created unnecessary turbulence at Vanessa's request to cut off conversations and force passengers back to their seats whenever confrontations arose. "That's not just discrimination," Washington said gravely. "That's endangering passenger safety. The FAA will have a field day with this." Sandra had one more revelation. Captain Jackson, who piloted the connecting flight to Huntsville, initially believed Vanessa's version of events. But after reviewing the passenger videos, he's been racked with guilt for his role. He's willing to testify that Vanessa explicitly told him over the intercom that Zara was faking a medical condition for attention. Washington's phone rang. Richard Schultz calling with news from his airline board contact. "The board just received an anonymous email with some of these same documents," Richard reported. "They've called an emergency meeting. Something big is happening." By afternoon, Washington had filed emergency motions with both the court and the FAA, using Sandra's evidence to request immediate action. Judge Harmon, suddenly facing potential ethics charges for her dinner with Vanessa, recused herself from the case. The newly assigned judge, Honorable Marcus Jenkins, reviewed the evidence and issued a temporary restraining order against Vanessa, the airline, and all associated parties, prohibiting any further retaliatory actions against the Morgans or their supporters. Meanwhile, other victims of Vanessa's discrimination, previously silenced by NDAs, began finding each other through private social media groups. Led by James Whitfield, who had connections throughout the industry, they organized a collective action to break their silence together, calculating that the airline couldn't sue dozens of people simultaneously without confirming the pattern. National civil rights organizations that had initially been cautious about the case now rushed to offer support, providing additional legal resources to Washington and media connections to ensure the story couldn't be buried. The tide was turning. But the most dramatic moment came when CEO Robert Kingsley, believing he was in a private board meeting, was caught on a hot mic making disparaging comments about Zara. "This whole mess over one troublesome little black girl in a wheelchair," he muttered to Conrad Phillips before realizing his microphone was live, broadcasting to the virtual attendees, including several major shareholders. "Just make her go away. Already." The comment, leaked to the press within hours, created immediate backlash. The company's stock plunged 15% in a single day, as investors panicked about potential liability and public relations damage. By evening, a congressional oversight committee announced an investigation into discriminatory practices in the airline industry, specifically citing the Morgan case as a catalyst. Senator Elaine Washington, no relation to Elijah, personally called Amara to express support and invite Zara to testify at upcoming hearings. For the first time in months, Amara allowed herself to feel something close to hope. As she sat beside Zara's bed that night, watching her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time since their ordeal began, she whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude for the unlikely heroes who had risked everything to stand with them. "We're going to be okay, baby," she promised softly, brushing a curl from Zara's forehead. "The truth is finally coming out." Sandra Pierce's whistleblowing was just the beginning of a cascade of revelations that transformed the Morgan case from a personal battle into a national movement for accountability in the transportation industry. In the days following her disclosure, other airline employees came forward with their own stories and evidence. A baggage handler revealed that he had been specifically instructed to misroute the Morgans' luggage to Birmingham. A gate agent admitted that Vanessa had personally called to ensure their connecting flight departed before they could reach the gate, despite the standard protocol of holding flights for passengers delayed by the airline's own actions. Most surprisingly, Captain Marcus Jackson, who had initially sided with Vanessa during the medical emergency on the Huntsville flight, came forward with a series of recordings. Like many pilots, he routinely recorded all communications during flights as a safety measure. The recordings captured Vanessa explicitly referring to Zara and Amara with racial slurs and stating that she was teaching them their place by denying assistance. "I was complicit through my silence," Jackson admitted in his statement. "When I saw that child in distress and did nothing to override Ms. Winter's obstruction of medical care, I failed as a captain and as a human being. I cannot remain silent any longer." The recordings were particularly damning because they contradicted statements Vanessa had made under oath during depositions, opening her to perjury charges in addition to the civil claims. Washington worked tirelessly to coordinate the growing number of witnesses and evidence, building not just a discrimination case, but a comprehensive RICO claim alleging that the airline had engaged in a pattern of racketeering activity by using mail and wire fraud to cover up civil rights violations. "This isn't just about one flight attendant or one incident anymore," he explained to Amara. "This is about a corporate culture that systematically violated federal law while retaliating against victims. The penalties for that are exponentially higher." The airline's board of directors, facing shareholder revolts and potential personal liability, called an emergency meeting that lasted through the night. By morning, they had reached a decision that sent shockwaves through the industry. CEO Robert Kingsley was asked to resign, effective immediately. In his place, they appointed Dr. Elaine Chao, a respected former transportation secretary with a strong record on civil rights enforcement. Her first official act was to fire Vanessa Winters, Conrad Phillips, and the entire legal team that had orchestrated the campaign against the Morgans and other victims. Dr. Chao personally called Amara to apologize on behalf of the company. "What happened to you and your daughter was inexcusable," she said firmly. "I've been authorized by the board to make this right, not just with financial compensation, but with real systemic changes to ensure it never happens again." The airline announced a comprehensive settlement that included not just substantial financial compensation for the Morgans and other victims, but concrete institutional changes, mandatory anti-discrimination training for all staff, new accessibility protocols developed in consultation with disability rights organizations, and an independent oversight committee to monitor compliance. Most significantly, they established a $50 million fund for anti-discrimination initiatives and scholarships for minority youth interested in aviation careers. The first scholarship was named in honor of Zara Morgan, recognizing her courage and her contributions to aerospace engineering, despite extraordinary challenges. The effects rippled beyond the airline. William Foster was removed as Space Camp Director following an independent investigation that confirmed his role in the attempted sabotage of Zara's project. The new director, Dr. Maya Patel, the same instructor who had supported Zara during the competition, personally invited her to return as an honored guest instructor for the next session. For Amara, vindication brought practical relief as well. The hospital board chairman who had orchestrated her firing was himself forced to resign when his role in the retaliation was exposed. The new administration not only reinstated her with back pay, but offered her a promotion to supervisor of pediatric nursing, recognizing her unwavering advocacy for vulnerable patients. Their apartment building suddenly found no code violations requiring evacuation, though Amara and Zara chose not to return. With the settlement funds, they purchased a small house in a neighborhood closer to both the hospital and Zara's school, giving them a fresh start free from painful associations. The social services investigation was closed with a formal apology, the caseworker who had conducted it admitting that she had been pressured by superiors to find problems where none existed. I almost compromised my professional ethics because of political pressure, she confessed. I'll have to live with that shame, but I'm testifying about it to ensure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Throughout this transformative period, unexpected allies emerged from every corner. The Schultz family remained steadfast supporters, with Emma and Zara's friendship blossoming despite the distance between Chicago and Boston. Richard used his corporate connections to ensure the airline's promises were kept, while Caroline worked with Washington to design educational programs about discrimination for schools nationwide. James Whitfield, vindicated and now recognized as a civil rights hero, established a foundation providing legal support to transportation passengers experiencing discrimination. For too long, we've allowed powerful corporations to silence victims through intimidation and legal maneuvering, he declared at the foundation's launch. That ends today. Sandra Pierce, despite losing her job and facing social ostracism from former colleagues, found purpose in her new role as an expert consultant for civil rights organizations. I spent years enabling discrimination by staying silent, she reflected. Now I can spend the rest of my career fighting it by speaking up. Captain Jackson refused promotion offers from other airlines, choosing instead to become a whistleblower, advocate and ethics instructor for aviation training programs. The real danger in our cockpits isn't mechanical failure, he often told his students. It's moral failure, the failure to speak truth when lives and dignity are at stake. The congressional hearings brought national attention to the broader issues of discrimination in transportation. Zara's testimony, delivered with the composure and eloquence that belied her 11 years, moved legislators to tears and inspired bipartisan support for strengthened enforcement of existing civil rights laws. I didn't want to be a symbol or an activist, Zara told the packed committee room. I just wanted to go to space camp and become an aerospace engineer. But when discrimination tried to take that dream away from me, I learned that sometimes you have to fight for your right to simply exist in spaces where people like you haven't been welcome before. For Amara, watching her daughter address Congress with such maturity and insight was a moment of indescribable pride, tinged with sadness. Zara had lost something precious, the innocent belief that her intelligence and character would always matter more than her race or disability. But she had gained something powerful too, the knowledge that justice, while not guaranteed, was worth fighting for, and that courage could inspire others to find their own. As winter gave way to spring, the Morgan case gradually faded from headlines, replaced by newer controversies and crises. But its impact continued to ripple through institutions and lives, a reminder that even the most entrenched systems could be changed when truth was wielded with persistence and courage. 1 year after the fateful flight that had changed their lives, Amara and Zara Morgan stood in the main auditorium of the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, surrounded by hundreds of young aspiring scientists and engineers. The occasion was the inaugural Zara Morgan Flight Innovation Competition, established as part of the airline's settlement, and now a prestigious annual event for young minds interested in aerospace engineering. Zara, now 12, had grown taller and more confident, though she still navigated the world in her wheelchair. As she took the stage to address the participants, she carried herself with the poise of someone who had weathered storms that would have broken many adults. Last year, I came to space camp with a dream of designing spacecraft that would make space exploration accessible to everyone, regardless of physical ability, she began, her voice clear and steady. What I didn't expect was that my journey to that dream would teach me more about courage and justice than about rocket engines. The audience, composed of students, educators, industry professionals, and civil rights advocates, listened in rapt attention as Zara recounted not just the discrimination she had faced, but the community of allies that had emerged to stand with her family. The most important lesson I learned wasn't about aerospace engineering, though I still love that, she continued with a smile. It was that systems, whether they're aircraft or institutions, are designed by humans and can be redesigned when they fail to serve all humans equally. In the front row, Amara watched her daughter with tears of pride glistening in her eyes. Beside her sat the unexpected community that had formed around their struggle. The Schultz family, James Whitfield, Elijah Washington, Sandra Pierce, Captain Jackson, and many others who had risked their own security to stand for justice. The past year had brought tremendous changes, both personal and systemic. The airline industry, shaken by the revelations from the Morgan case, had implemented sweeping reforms in accessibility and anti-discrimination policies. Delta, under Dr. Chow's leadership, had transformed from a cautionary tale into a model of corporate accountability. Its new training programs and oversight mechanisms setting standards that other companies were now being pressured to adopt. The $50 million fund established as part of the settlement was already supporting dozens of initiatives, from engineering scholarships for minority students to accessibility improvements in public transportation. The Zara Morgan Scholarship had sent its first 5 recipients to prestigious aerospace engineering programs, with Zara herself serving as a mentor despite her young age. On the legal front, the consequences had been equally profound. Vanessa Winters ultimately faced both civil and criminal charges, the latter stemming from endangering passenger safety by instructing pilots to create unnecessary turbulence and by obstructing medical care during an emergency. After a highly publicized trial, she received a suspended sentence and community service obligation, required to work directly with disability rights organizations, a punishment designed for education rather than mere retribution. Conrad Phillips and several other executives involved in the cover-up faced professional censure and civil penalties. Some chose to cooperate with authorities, revealing deeper patterns of discrimination that led to industry-wide investigations and reforms. Most significantly, the case had established important legal precedents for holding corporations accountable for systematic discrimination. Washington had successfully argued that using corporate resources to silence victims and cover up civil rights violations constituted a pattern of racketeering activity under RICO statutes, dramatically increasing both the penalties and the deterrent effect. The Morgan case, as it came to be known in legal circles, was now being taught in law schools as a landmark in both civil rights and corporate accountability jurisprudence. For Amara personally, the journey had transformed her as well. No longer just a dedicated nurse, she had become an advocate and public speaker, frequently addressing healthcare and transportation organizations about the intersection of race, disability, and access to services. The hospital where she now served as a department supervisor had established new protocols for accommodating patients with disabilities, with Amara leading the implementation team. Together with the Schultzes, the Morgans had established the Equity in Motion Foundation, dedicated to combating discrimination in transportation and public accommodations. The foundation provided legal support to victims, educational resources to institutions, and advocacy for policy changes at local, state, and federal levels. Sandra Pierce, once afraid to speak out, had found her voice as the foundation's director of corporate accountability programs, working with companies to develop internal whistleblower protections and ethical compliance standards. "Fear kept me silent for too long," she often said in her presentations. "Now I help create environments where people don't have to choose between their conscience and their livelihood." James Whitfield, despite his 70 years, had emerged as a tireless advocate for transportation equity, testifying before regulatory agencies and mentoring younger activists. "I spent decades in airline management thinking change had to come gradually," he reflected. "The Morgan case taught me that sometimes justice needs to move at the speed of a rocket, not a glacier." Captain Jackson had established an ethics training program for pilots and flight crews, teaching them that their responsibility extended beyond technical operation of aircraft to the dignity and safety of every passenger. "The cockpit is not separate from the cabin," his curriculum emphasized. "We are all responsible for the human cargo we carry." Even William Foster, the former space camp director who had tried to sabotage Zara's experience, had undergone something of a transformation. After losing his position and facing public disgrace, he had eventually reached out to the Morgans through their foundation, seeking to make amends. Now he worked with corporate diversity programs, sharing his story as a cautionary tale of how bias can blind even educated professionals to their own discriminatory behavior. As Zara concluded her address at the competition, she unveiled the plaque that would hang in the Space Center's main hall, commemorating not just her individual achievement, but the collective effort that had transformed a personal injustice into a movement for systemic change. "The stars have always been for everyone," she read from the plaque's inscription. "Let us ensure that the path to reach them is equally accessible." The ceremony transitioned to the competition itself, where young engineers from diverse backgrounds presented innovations in spacecraft design, many specifically addressing accessibility challenges in space exploration. Zara took particular pride in mentoring Emma Schultz, whose project on gravity-adaptive mobility aids showed remarkable promise. Later that evening, at a private reception for the Foundation's supporters, Amara found a moment of quiet reflection amid the celebration. A year ago, she had been a single mother simply trying to give her talented daughter a chance to pursue her dreams. Now they stood at the center of a movement that was changing institutions and touching countless lives. "Penny for your thoughts," James Whitfield said, approaching with 2 glasses of sparkling cider and offering one to Amara. "I was just thinking about how differently this all could have ended," she admitted, accepting the glass. "If Sandra hadn't found her courage, if you hadn't stood up for us that first day, if the Schultzes hadn't been on that connecting flight, if your daughter hadn't been so brilliant and determined," James added. "Don't forget that part. Zara inspired people to be their best selves by refusing to be anything less than her full self, even when the system tried to diminish her." Across the room, Zara was deep in conversation with a NASA engineer who was taking detailed notes as she explained her latest ideas for adaptive control systems. Despite everything she had experienced, she had never lost her passion for aerospace, engineering, or her belief that she belonged in spaces where few people who looked like her or navigated the world as she did had been welcome before. "She's going to change the world, isn't she?" Amara said softly, watching her daughter's animated expressions as she described thrust vectors and orbital mechanics. "She already has," James replied simply. "We all have together." As the evening wound down, Amara and Zara found themselves standing outside the Space Center, gazing up at the stars that had always represented possibility to them. The Saturn V rocket was illuminated against the night sky, a monument to human ingenuity and the power of seemingly impossible dreams. "Mom," Zara said thoughtfully, "do you remember what you told me that night in the hotel, when everything seemed hopeless? When you said some things matter more than comfort or safety?" Amara nodded, remembering the lowest point of their journey, when surrender had seemed like the only option. "I told you that sometimes the truth matters more than anything." "You were right," Zara said, reaching for her mother's hand. "But I think I understand something now that I didn't then. It wasn't just about our truth. It was about changing the truth for everyone who would come after us." Amara squeezed her daughter's hand, overcome by the wisdom beyond her years. "That's exactly right, baby. That's exactly right." As they turned to leave, a young flight attendant trainee approached them hesitantly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice nervous but determined. "I just wanted to thank you both. Your case is why I decided to become a flight attendant. I want to be part of the change from the inside." She held out a small notebook filled with careful notes. "I've been studying all the new protocols. I promise you, on my flights, every passenger will be treated with dignity, regardless of their race or ability." Amara thanked her warmly, touched by this unexpected affirmation that their struggle continued to inspire positive change. As the young woman walked away, Zara looked up at her mother with a smile that held both innocence and hard-won wisdom. "Maybe that's how justice really works," she said thoughtfully. "Not just in big court cases and settlements, but in all the small choices people make every day once they've seen the truth." Amara nodded, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulders as they made their way toward the future. A future they had helped reshape not just for themselves, but for countless others whose names they would never know. Behind them, the Saturn V rocket stood as a testament to human potential, and before them stretched a path of possibility. Not an easy path, perhaps, but one they had helped make more accessible for all who would follow. The story of Zara and Amara Morgan offers profound lessons about courage, systemic discrimination, and the power of collective action. First, it reminds us that injustice thrives in silence. It was only when people began speaking out together that meaningful change occurred. One voice can be silenced, but many voices create an unstoppable force. Second, it illustrates how discrimination operates not through isolated incidents, but through interconnected systems. Vanessa's prejudice was protected by corporate structures, legal tactics, and social networks designed to preserve power rather than promote justice. Recognizing these patterns is essential to dismantling them. Third, the story demonstrates that true allies don't just offer sympathy, they take concrete risks. The Schultzes used their privilege to shield the Morgans, Washington risked his career, and Sandra sacrificed her livelihood for the truth. Real solidarity requires meaningful sacrifice. Fourth, it highlights the disproportionate burden placed on marginalized people to fight for basic dignity. Zara and Amara did nothing wrong, yet they had to sacrifice their privacy, security, and peace to hold wrongdoers accountable, a burden that reflects broader societal inequities. Finally, and most powerfully, this story teaches us that systems can change when enough people refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. The airline's transformation from enabler of discrimination to champion of inclusion proves that no institution is beyond redemption when confronted with the moral clarity of those demanding better. These lessons remind us that justice isn't an abstract ideal, but a daily practice requiring vigilance, courage, and community. When we stand together against discrimination, we don't just help individual victims, we help build a world where such stories become increasingly rare. Has a story like Zara's ever moved you to take action against discrimination you've witnessed? Comment below with your experience standing up for what's right. If you believe in creating a world where children like Zara never have to face such treatment, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that challenge us to create change. Share this video with someone who needs to understand why speaking up matters. Your voice could inspire the next whistleblower or ally in someone else's fight for justice. Thank you for listening to Zara's journey with such compassion. May we all find the courage to be the Sandra Pierce or James Whitfield in someone else's story of injustice, because true change happens when ordinary people make the extraordinary decision to stand for what's right, regardless of the cost.